Story number 1. The Cold Traveler of Vermont. Winter in Vermont is a season of stark beauty and relentless harshness. The snow blankets the landscape in a pristine white silence, transforming familiar roads into desolate stretches of frozen solitude. Growing up in the small town of Maple Hollow, I heard the stories about the cold traveler countless times. They were the kind of tales parents told their children to keep them from wandering too far at night. As a skeptic, I always dismissed them as mere folklore. That is, until one bitterly cold December night changed everything. It was late December, and the winter storm had settled in with an unforgiving grip. The roads were slick with ice, and visibility was reduced to mere feet ahead. I had been driving home from a late shift at the local mill, eager to escape the biting wind and the howling snow. Maple Hollow was a short drive away, but the journey that night felt interminable, the darkness pressing in from all sides. As I navigated the winding roads, the headlights cutting through the thickening fog, my mind wandered to the stories I had heard all my life. The cold traveler, a man cloaked in a long, heavy coat, his face obscured by a hood, was said to appear on deserted roads during the dead of winter. Those who encountered him were urged to stop and offer assistance. But when they turned back, he would vanish without a trace. Some even claimed to see his shadow etched into the snow. Yet no footprints followed. I chuckled to myself, shaking off the creeping unease. Just an old ghost story, I muttered, focusing back on the road. But as I approached the infamous Maple Hollow Bridge, a place notorious for eerie sightings, my skepticism began to waver. The bridge was old, its wooden planks groaning under the weight of the snow, spanning a narrow creek that was now frozen solid. The clock on my dashboard read 12:15 a.m. I glanced at the mile marker. Maple Hollow Bridge was just a mile away. The storm had intensified, the snow swirling in a furious dance that made the road ahead a blur of white and gray. My headlights flickered momentarily, and I cursed under my breath, fumbling with the wipers that struggled against the relentless snow. Suddenly, through the thick fog, I saw him, a figure standing at the edge of the bridge. He was dressed in a long, dark coat that billowed slightly in the wind, his head hidden beneath the shadow of his hood. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached cautiously, the car's headlights revealing his stillness. He didn't move, didn't make a sound, just stood there, a solitary sentinel in the storm. I slowed down, contemplating whether to stop. The stories told that offering help could bring misfortune, but I couldn't just ignore someone stranded in such treacherous conditions. "Need a ride?" I called out, my voice barely audible over the roar of the wind. He remained silent, his posture rigid, almost expectant. I pulled over to the side of the road, the engine idling as I turned off the interior light, plunging the car into darkness save for the beams of my headlights. The cold seemed to seep into the car, making the air thick and heavy. I watched him carefully, every instinct urging me to leave. Yet a sense of obligation kept me rooted to my seat. Minutes passed in tense silence. The storm raged on outside, the snowflakes hammering against the windows like tiny shards of ice. I reached for my phone, contemplating a call for help, but hesitated. "It's just me," I thought. "I can handle this." Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he took a step forward. His movement was deliberate, almost graceful. Despite the harsh conditions, I felt a chill run down my spine as he began to walk towards my car. The beam of my headlights illuminated his figure, revealing nothing beneath his hood, no face, no distinguishing features, just the dark silhouette of his attire. "Please," I ventured, my voice trembling slightly. "Do you need help?" Still, he remained silent, standing just a few feet away. I opened the passenger door, the cold air rushing into the car, making me shiver involuntarily. "Come in," I offered, my hesitation clear in my voice. Without warning, he stepped onto the car's roof, his presence unnerving. I stared in disbelief, my mind racing to rationalize the impossible. Why would someone stand on the roof in such a storm? As he settled there, I noticed something strange. His hands were cold to the touch, the fingers like brittle ice. Yet he showed no sign of discomfort. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him lingering in the fog behind us. But the road was empty. "Are you all right?" I asked, trying to mask my fear. He didn't respond, simply staring ahead with an intensity that felt almost supernatural. I pressed my foot against the gas pedal, wanting to put distance between us. But something held me back. The car seemed to hesitate, as if the storm itself was an obstacle I couldn't overcome. Suddenly, the windshield wipers failed, the snow piling up against the glass, blinding me. Panic surged through me as I struggled to regain control. But the car refused to move forward. The cold traveler remained silent, his presence a constant, chilling reminder of the legends I had once dismissed. Desperate, I turned off the engine, the car falling into an eerie silence except for the howling wind. The figure on the roof seemed to grow more prominent, the darkness around him deepening. I reached for my phone, intending to call for help, but it was dead just as I had feared. Minutes turned into hours, or so it felt, as the storm continued its relentless assault. The cold was now unbearable, my breath visible in the icy air inside the car. I tried to think logically, recalling what my grandmother had said about such encounters. "Don't make eye contact. Don't engage," she had warned. But I was alone, trapped with the cold traveler, my options dwindling. Just as I began to lose hope, the storm began to abate, the snow slowing to a gentle fall. The figure on the roof started to fade, his form becoming translucent, almost ethereal. I felt the tension in the car ease, the oppressive atmosphere lifting slightly. As the last remnants of the cold traveler dissolved into the night, the engine sputtered back to life, responding to my attempts to restart it. I didn't hesitate. I put the car into gear and accelerated away from the bridge, the road clearing as if by magic. The figure of the cold traveler was gone, leaving me alone with the quiet aftermath of the storm. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, the memory of those silent moments etched into my mind. When I finally reached home, the warmth of my house was a stark contrast to the freezing ordeal I had just endured. I locked the doors behind me, my heart still racing from the encounter. The next day, I couldn't shake the experience from my thoughts. Determined to understand what had happened, I visited the town library, poring over old records and newspaper clippings about the cold traveler of Maple Hollow Bridge. I discovered that the legend originated from a tragic accident in the late 1940s. A man named Thomas Blake had been driving his wife, Eleanor, across Maple Hollow Bridge on a snowy night. Their car skidded on the ice, plummeting into the creek below. Both perished in the crash, their spirits forever bound to the bridge they couldn't escape. Locals believed that Thomas, in his desperation to save Eleanor, had become a restless spirit, appearing to help lost travelers find their way, or perhaps seeking redemption for his inability to save his beloved. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to the bridge the following winter, hoping to lay the spirits to rest. Equipped with candles, photographs of Thomas and Eleanor, and a heartfelt letter of apology, I stood on the bridge as midnight approached. The snow began to fall gently, the atmosphere calm and serene. As the clock struck 12, I lit the candles and placed them on the bridge, reading my letter aloud. "Thomas, Eleanor, I am truly sorry for your loss. Please find peace and let your spirits rest." The air grew still, the only sound the soft whisper of the falling snow. For a moment, nothing happened, and I felt a sense of accomplishment. But then, a soft glow began to emanate from the center of the bridge. The figure of the cold traveler appeared, his form shimmering in the moonlight. This time, however, there was no fear, only a profound sadness in his silent gaze. He approached the candles, the light reflecting off his ethereal form. I watched as he knelt beside them, his presence now peaceful rather than menacing. The glow surrounding him intensified, enveloping the bridge in a warm, golden light. Slowly, his figure began to dissolve, the light carrying him away into the night sky. As he vanished, I felt a weight lift from the bridge, a sense of closure that had been missing for decades. The candles burned brightly for a few moments longer before extinguishing themselves, leaving behind a tranquil silence. Driving away from Maple Hollow that night, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The cold traveler had been finally laid to rest, his spirit free from the torment that had bound him for so long. The road ahead was clear, the snow now a gentle blanket that reflected the soft glow of the moon. Years have passed since that winter night, and the stories of the cold traveler have transformed from tales of fear to legends of redemption. Maple Hollow Bridge stands as a monument to the love and loss of Thomas and Eleanor Blake, a reminder that even in the coldest, darkest nights, compassion and understanding can bring peace to restless souls. Sometimes, on quiet winter evenings, I find myself driving past Maple Hollow, the bridge illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights. I pause for a moment, looking out into the snow-covered landscape, and I feel a connection to the spirits that once haunted the bridge. The cold traveler no longer appears, but his story remains a testament to the enduring power of love and the importance of remembering those who have been lost. In the end, the cold traveler of Vermont taught me that legends are more than just stories. They are echoes of the past, carrying the emotions and memories of those who came before us. And as I continue my journey through life, I carry with me the lessons learned on that snowy night: to approach the unknown with empathy, to seek understanding even in the face of fear, and to believe in the possibility of peace for all souls, living and departed alike. Story number 2. Whispers on Crybaby Bridge. Winter in Texas is an oddity. While the southern state is synonymous with scorching summers and mild winters, the cold months bring a different kind of chill, one that seeps into your bones and whispers secrets through the biting wind. It was during one such winter that I decided to take the long drive home, traversing the infamous Crybaby Bridge, a place shrouded in local lore and fear. I grew up hearing stories about Crybaby Bridge from my grandmother. She would sit by the fireplace, her eyes distant as she recounted tales of restless spirits and eerie phenomena that plagued the bridge every winter night. According to her, if you stopped on the bridge at midnight, you could hear the cries of children carried by the wind. Some drivers claimed to see small handprints on their car windows, despite no one being around. As a skeptic, I dismissed these as mere ghost stories meant to scare kids and inexperienced drivers. But that night, the legends would take on a reality I couldn't have imagined. The road was deserted, the darkness thick and impenetrable. My headlights cut through the blackness, illuminating the winding path that led to Crybaby Bridge. Snowflakes danced in the air, carried by the cold breeze that whispered through the tall pines lining the highway. The temperature had dropped unexpectedly, turning the asphalt slick and treacherous. I was tired from a long day's work, eager to reach the warmth of home, but the road ahead promised more than just a simple drive through a winter night. As I approached Crybaby Bridge, the air grew colder, and an unsettling silence settled over the area. The bridge itself was old, its wooden planks worn and creaky from years of neglect. It spanned a narrow creek, the water below barely visible beneath the fresh blanket of snow. The bridge was infamous not just for its eerie sounds but also for the tragic accident that occurred decades ago. A family of 4 lost their lives when their car skidded off the icy road, plunging into the creek below. Since then, the bridge had earned its macabre nickname. I glanced at my dashboard clock. Midnight was approaching. The stories my grandmother told me echoed in my mind, but I laughed them off. Just old wives' tales, I muttered to myself, though a flicker of unease settled in my chest. The road was nearly straight, with no signs of traffic. The only sounds were the crunch of my tires on the snow-covered pavement and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Deciding to take a short break, I pulled over to the side of the bridge. The snowflakes were falling heavier now, obscuring my view and making the world seem distant and surreal. I turned off the engine, the sudden silence enveloping me like a heavy blanket. The temperature inside the car dropped noticeably, my breath visible in the dim light of the dashboard. I reached for my phone to check the time, but the battery was dead, a fact I had forgotten in my exhaustion. Glancing out the window, I noticed something peculiar. Tiny handprints were etched onto the glass, smeared by the condensation from the cold air. My heart skipped a beat. I glanced around, but the bridge was empty, the darkness concealing any sign of movement. Probably just frost patterns, I told myself, trying to quell the rising anxiety. But as I settled back into my seat, a soft, distant sound reached my ears, a faint, sorrowful crying that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the bridge. It was the unmistakable sound of children crying, carried by the wind and amplified by the isolation of the night. I froze, listening intently. The cries grew louder, more distinct, filling the car with an unbearable melancholy. My grandmother's stories played vividly in my mind: children lost, spirits restless, a bridge that held the echoes of tragedy. I attempted to rationalize the sounds. Maybe it was just the wind, or perhaps the acoustics of the bridge creating eerie reverberations. But deep down, I knew it was something more. A shiver ran down my spine as I noticed the temperature inside the car dropping further. The windows fogged up, and the handprints seemed to glow faintly, shimmering in the dim light. My breath quickened, and my hands trembled slightly as I reached for the steering wheel. I considered driving off, leaving the bridge and its haunted reputation behind. But something held me in place, a mix of fear and curiosity. As the clock struck midnight, the crying reached its peak. It was no longer a distant wail but a palpable presence within the car. The sound wrapped around me, each cry a piercing reminder of the tragedy that had occurred here years ago. I felt a heaviness pressing against my chest, making it difficult to breathe. My mind raced with images of the lost family, their lives cut short by the unforgiving winter night. Suddenly, the handprints on the window began to move, tracing patterns that resembled faces and figures. It was as if the spirits were trying to communicate, reaching out from beyond the veil. I watched in horror as translucent apparitions materialized on the glass, children with hollow eyes and sorrowful expressions, their forms wavering like mist in the cold air. One of the apparitions pointed towards the creek below, its finger trembling with an otherworldly energy. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized the bridge was trying to tell me something, perhaps a plea for remembrance, or a desire to never be forgotten. The crying intensified, blending with the whispers of the wind to create a symphony of sorrow that filled the car. I mustered the courage to speak, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry," I said, feeling a connection to the lost souls that haunted this place. The apparitions seemed to soften, their expressions easing as if finding solace in my words. The handprints faded, and the crying gradually subsided, leaving behind an eerie silence that felt both comforting and melancholic. Feeling a mix of relief and lingering fear, I decided it was time to leave. I started the engine, the warmth of the car returning as the heater kicked in. As I drove away, I glanced back at Crybaby Bridge one last time. The apparitions had vanished, but the memory of their cries and the sight of their sorrowful faces remained etched in my mind. The rest of the drive was uneventful, the storm still raging but the road clear. I reached home safely, but the experience left a profound impact on me. My skepticism had been shattered, replaced by a deep respect for the legends and the spirits that lingered in forgotten places. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been touched by something beyond the natural world, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring presence of those who could not move on. In the weeks that followed, I found myself drawn back to Crybaby Bridge, not out of fear, but a desire to honor the memories of the lost souls. I spoke with locals, learning more about the tragedy and the stories of those who had perished. The bridge stood as a testament to their lives, a silent witness to the winter night that had taken them away. One evening, as I stood on the bridge with a small memorial I had placed there, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The cold wind carried the faint sound of children's laughter, a stark contrast to the sorrowful cries of that fateful night. It was as if the spirits had found closure, their presence now a reminder of love and loss intertwined. Winter continued to blanket Texas in snow, each night bringing a new layer of stillness and beauty to Crybaby Bridge. The stories persisted, but now they carried a sense of reverence rather than fear. Drivers still paused on the bridge at midnight, some out of curiosity, others seeking a moment of connection with the past. The handprints on the windows became a symbol of remembrance, a tribute to the lives lost and the spirits that watched over the bridge. As for me, Crybaby Bridge became a place of reflection and respect. The legends were no longer just stories but a living history that connected me to the souls that had once walked this land. I realized that some places hold memories too powerful to be forgotten, their stories etched into the very fabric of the earth. And on cold winter nights, as I think back to that eerie midnight encounter, I understand the true meaning of the legends my grandmother once told me. Crybaby Bridge stands as a haunting reminder that even in the coldest, darkest nights, love and loss echo through time, bridging the gap between the living and the dead. Taught me that sometimes the most chilling tales hold the deepest truths, and that every whisper in the wind carries the weight of a story waiting to be heard. Story number 3. The Phantom Ride on Route 66. Winter in Arizona is a deceptive season. While the scorching heat of summer leaves most of us longing for the chill, the winter months cloak the desert in an eerie stillness. It was during one such winter that I found myself driving along the infamous Route 66, a road steeped in history and haunted by legends that locals whispered about in hushed tones. I had always been fascinated by ghost stories and the supernatural. Growing up, my grandfather would regale me with tales of restless spirits and unexplained phenomena, each story more chilling than the last. But nothing had prepared me for the night I encountered the phantom car, a legend that had always seemed too far-fetched to believe. It was late December, and I was returning from a business trip in Flagstaff. The roads were slick with frost, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting long, twisted shadows across the highway. I was tired, my eyes heavy from hours of driving, but I knew I had to make it back before the worst of the winter storm hit. As I cruised down Route 66, the familiar sights of motels and roadside diners blurred past me. The highway, usually bustling with traffic, was now eerily quiet. Only the occasional truck passed by, its headlights cutting through the thickening fog that rolled in from the desert. I had just passed the old diner where I had stopped for a quick meal earlier that evening when I saw it. A vintage car, unmistakably from the 1950s, speeding towards me through the fog. The car was a cherry-red Chevy Bel Air, gleaming under the streetlights, its chrome details reflecting the dim light. What struck me as odd was the way it moved, too fast for a road like this, its headlights piercing the darkness with an intensity that seemed almost otherworldly. As the car drew closer, my heart began to race. I slowed down, unsure if what I was seeing was real or just a trick of the light. The car approached my vehicle, weaving dangerously between lanes, its engine roaring like a beast from another time. I felt a chill run down my spine, a primal fear that told me something was terribly wrong. Without warning, the car began to fade, its image becoming translucent as if it were dissolving into the mist. My headlights flickered, and for a moment, I thought it had vanished entirely. But then, the car reappeared, this time directly in front of me, its front bumper inches from my windshield. The windows were dark, and I couldn't see inside, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. I slammed on the brakes, my tires skidding on the icy pavement. The car screeched to a halt just inches away from mine, the engine idling menacingly. I sat frozen, staring at the ghostly vehicle, unable to comprehend what was happening. The air around me seemed to grow colder, the fog thickening as if the night itself was closing in. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the car began to fade again, its form becoming more transparent with each passing second. But this time, something was different. I heard a faint voice, barely audible over the howling wind, a woman's voice, filled with sorrow and despair. "Help us!" The voice sent a shiver through me, and I realized that this was no ordinary ghost story. The phantom car of Route 66 wasn't just a specter. It was the restless souls of a couple who had met a tragic end on this very road decades ago. According to local legend, in the winter of 1952, a young couple named Jack and Emily were driving home for their honeymoon when their car lost control on the icy highway, plunging into the unforgiving desert landscape. Both perished in the accident, their spirits forever bound to the road that had taken them away too soon. I wanted to leave, to speed away from the haunted highway, but something held me in place. The woman's voice called out again, more insistent this time. "Please, help us find peace." My mind raced, trying to make sense of the apparition before me. Had the spirits of Jack and Emily been trying to communicate for years, their tragic story repeating itself every winter? I glanced in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see the ghostly car following me. But the highway remained empty. Taking a deep breath, I decided to respond, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'll help you." The car's image flickered, and the woman's voice softened. "Thank you." As if on cue, the fog began to lift, and the chill in the air dissipated. The car slowly faded away, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of calm. I sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened, before cautiously pulling back onto the highway. The rest of my drive home was uneventful, the storm still raging but the road clear. When I finally reached my destination, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had witnessed something extraordinary. That night, couldn't sleep, the memory of the phantom car and the sorrowful plea echoing in my mind. Determined to understand what had happened, I began researching the legend of the ghost car on Route 66. I spoke with locals, delving into old newspaper archives and town records. What I discovered confirmed the tragic story of Jack and Emily. Their love story cut short by a brutal winter storm. It seemed their spirits had been trapped, reliving their final moments on the road that had taken them away. I realized that by acknowledging their plight, I had helped them find a semblance of peace. The next winter, I returned to Route 66, this time armed with information and a desire to honor their memory. I placed a small memorial near the site of their accident, a simple plaque with their names and a message of remembrance. As the years passed, the sightings of the phantom car became less frequent. It was as if Jack and Emily had finally found the peace they had been seeking for so many decades. Their tragic story remained a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of love, even in the face of death. But sometimes, late at night, when the desert is quiet and the moon casts long shadows on the highway, I still catch a glimpse of that vintage Chevy Bel Air, a silent sentinel watching over the road that had once claimed their lives. And I can't help but feel a deep sense of connection, knowing that I played a small part in their journey towards the afterlife. Route 66 remains a symbol of America's spirit of adventure and resilience, but it also holds the memories of those who traveled its length before me. The phantom car is more than just a ghost story. It's a testament to the enduring human spirit and the unbreakable bonds that transcend even death itself. So, if you find yourself driving along Route 66 on a cold winter night, keep an eye on the foggy horizon. You might just encounter the ghost car, a reminder that some stories never truly end and that love can linger long after life has passed. Story number 4. The Strange Lights of Brown Mountain. Winter in North Carolina is deceptively serene. The snow blankets the Brown Mountain Range, turning the rugged landscape into a quiet, monochromatic expanse. Growing up in the nearby town of Pine Ridge, I had heard the stories, whispers of ghostly miners and unexplained lights that danced in the night sky. As a child, I dismissed them as old men's tales meant to scare off curious kids. But now, years later, I found myself drawn back to Brown Mountain, compelled by a mixture of skepticism and a desire to uncover the truth behind the legends. It was early December when I decided to visit Pine Ridge. The town had changed little since my childhood, retaining its quaint charm despite the encroaching modernity. The locals were friendly but guarded, their conversations often veering towards the mysterious lights that appeared each winter. They spoke of a mine collapse decades ago, a tragedy that claimed the lives of dozens of miners. Since then, the mountain had been haunted by restless spirits, their presence manifesting as eerie, flickering lights that defied explanation. I rented a cabin on the outskirts of town, its windows offering a clear view of Brown Mountain. The first few nights passed uneventfully, the silence of the snow-covered wilderness both comforting and unnerving. But on the fourth night, as midnight approached, I noticed a faint glow in the distance. At first, it was just a single light, pulsing gently against the dark sky. Intrigued, I grabbed my camera and ventured outside, the cold air biting at my skin. The lights began to multiply, forming a trail that snaked up the mountain. They flickered in irregular patterns, sometimes bright and other times dim, as if communicating in a language of their own. I followed the trail, my footsteps crunching on the fresh snow, the only sound breaking the stillness of the night. The deeper I went, the more the atmosphere shifted. An oppressive feeling settled over me, and the air grew thick with an unspoken tension. After what felt like hours, the trail led me to the entrance of the old mine. The structure was barely visible, its entrance partially collapsed and overgrown with ice and snow. Memories of the tragedy flooded my mind, images of desperate men trapped underground, their cries swallowed by the mountain. I hesitated, the weight of history pressing down on me, but curiosity pushed me forward. I pulled out my flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness as I stepped inside. The tunnel was narrow and claustrophobic, the walls slick with moisture. My footsteps echoed ominously as I ventured deeper, the temperature dropping noticeably. The flickering lights seemed to guide me, their presence both comforting and foreboding. I reached a large cavern, the ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood an old wooden platform, remnants of the mining equipment scattered around it. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and sharp. Suddenly, the lights coalesced into a figure, a miner dressed in antiquated gear, his face obscured by shadows. He raised his hand, pointing towards the far end of the cavern where the sound of dripping water echoed. I followed his gesture, my heart pounding in my chest. There, half buried in the snow, lay a set of old mining tools, their surfaces rusted and worn. It was as if the spirits were trying to communicate, urging me to uncover the forgotten remnants of their past. As I approached the tools, the temperature plummeted further, my breath visible in the frigid air. The figure of the miner began to dissolve, the lights fading until only a faint glow remained. I reached out, touching a pickaxe handle, the surface cold and unyielding. In that moment, a powerful gust of wind surged through the cavern, and the lights reignited, swirling around me in a chaotic dance. The ground trembled, and the sound of distant explosions filled the air, echoes of the disaster that had befallen these men. Panic surged through me as I realized the mountain was alive with the memories of its victims. The lights were not just apparitions. They were the lingering spirits, trapped in a loop of their final moments. Desperate to escape, I turned to flee, but the tunnel seemed endless, the path back obscured by the swirling lights. Shadows lengthened, shapes emerging from the darkness, other miners, their faces twisted in anguish, their eyes hollow and empty. I stumbled, falling to my knees as the weight of their sorrow pressed down on me. Tears streamed down my face, a mix of fear and empathy for these lost souls. The temperature dropped to unbearable levels, frost forming on my skin, my limbs numb. The voices of the miners grew louder, their whispers a haunting chorus that filled my mind with visions of despair and loss. Summoning every ounce of strength, I forced myself to stand, focusing on the trail of lights that had led me here. The central platform beckoned, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. I made my way towards it, the oppressive atmosphere beginning to lift as I drew closer. The lights swirled around me, their intensity dimming as if recognizing my determination to bring peace to their restless spirits. Reaching the platform, I found an old journal partially buried in the snow. Carefully, I picked it up, the pages brittle and yellowed with age. The entries were frantic, detailing the miners' struggle to survive the collapse, their hopes for rescue, and their eventual realization of the futility of their situation. The final entry was a plea for remembrance, a desire to be remembered and honored rather than forgotten. Understanding washed over me. These spirits were not malevolent, but yearning for closure. I took a deep breath, clutching the journal to my chest, and began to speak aloud, my voice steady despite the lingering fear. I remember your sacrifices. Your stories will not be forgotten. As the words left my mouth, the lights began to coalesce once more, forming the miners' figures. Their faces softened, expressions of relief replacing the anguish. The air warmed slightly, the oppressive feeling lifting as a sense of peace settled over the cavern. The lights shimmered, their forms becoming translucent before dissipating into the air, leaving behind a profound silence. Exiting the mine, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange. The strange lights of Brown Mountain had vanished, their purpose fulfilled. I made my way back to the cabin, the weight of the night's events heavy on my mind but my heart lighter with the knowledge that I had helped bring peace to those lost souls. In the days that followed, the townsfolk noticed a change in the mountain. The eerie lights no longer appeared, and the oppressive atmosphere had lifted. Pine Ridge seemed more vibrant, as if the mountain itself had been freed from a long-held burden. I shared the journal with the local historical society, ensuring that the miners' stories would be preserved for future generations. Winter in North Carolina remained beautiful and serene. But now, when the snow fell gently on Brown Mountain, I felt a deeper connection to its history and the lives lost within its depths. The legend of the strange lights had been more than a ghost story. It was a testament to the enduring human spirit and the importance of remembrance. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I find myself gazing towards the mountain, a sense of gratitude filling me for the chance to witness and honor the lives of those who came before. The strange lights of Brown Mountain will always hold a special place in my heart, a reminder that even in the coldest, darkest winters, hope and remembrance can bring light to the shadows. Story number 5. The Dybbuk Box of Missouri. Winter in Missouri has a way of seeping into your bones. But nothing could have prepared me for the chill that emanated from the Dybbuk box I brought home. It was a cold December evening when I stumbled upon the auction listing. An antique collector's dream or nightmare, as I would soon discover. The box was modest, crafted from dark wood with intricate carvings that seemed to shift and writhe under my gaze. The seller's description mentioned its dubious origins and the eerie legends surrounding it. But skepticism won over curiosity, and I won the bid. From the moment the box arrived, my home felt different. It sat innocently on my living room table, its presence almost magnetic. The first night, as snowflakes danced violently against my windows, I lay in bed, the box a silent sentinel beside me. Around midnight, a soft whispering began, barely audible over the howling wind. At first, I dismissed it as the house settling or the wind finding its way through the cracks. But the whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if voices were trying to communicate something urgent. I tried to ignore it, burying myself in books and work. But the whispers became a nightly ritual. They spoke in fragmented sentences, snippets of conversations in a language I couldn't fully understand. Sometimes, I felt a presence behind me, a weight pressing against my back, making it hard to breathe. Sleep became a battleground, my dreams invaded by dark shadows and fleeting glimpses of ghostly figures standing at the edge of my vision. One particularly harsh winter night, the snowstorm was relentless, transforming Missouri into a frozen wasteland. The power flickered and died, plunging my home into darkness. With only the dim light of my flashlight, I approached the Dybbuk box, compelled by a force I couldn't explain. The carvings seemed to shimmer in the beam, the whispers now a cacophony of desperate voices. Tentatively, I opened the box. A rush of icy air escaped, and the room plunged into a frigid silence. Inside was a small, weathered scroll and a tarnished silver pendant. As I picked up the pendant, the temperature dropped further, my breath visible in the air. The scroll was written in Hebrew, the words ancient and cryptic. I couldn't read them, but the emotions they conveyed were clear: fear, anguish, plea for release. That night, the house became a battleground between the living and the dead. The whispers escalated into screams. Doors slammed shut on their own, and shadows twisted into grotesque shapes. I felt an invisible force pinning me to the floor, the pendant burning against my skin. Panic set in as I realized the Dybbuk box wasn't just an antique. It was a vessel for something malevolent, a Dybbuk intent on reclaiming its freedom. Desperate for answers, I reached out to Rachel, a friend versed in folklore and the supernatural. She arrived the next morning, her face pale but determined. After hearing my account, she examined the box with a mixture of fascination and dread. A Dybbuk is a restless spirit, often bound by unresolved issues or tragic ends. She explained, "This box is its prison, but it seems to be weakening." Rachel suggested performing a cleansing ritual to contain the spirit. We gathered the necessary items: salt, candles, holy water, and began the incantation under her guidance. The house trembled as we chanted, the air thick with tension. The whispers turned into anguished wails, the shadows converging on the box. I held the pendant tightly, feeling its cold energy pulsate through me. As we neared the climax of the ritual, the Dybbuk manifested in full force. A dark, swirling mist coalesced into a humanoid form, eyes burning with hatred and sorrow. It reached out towards us, its presence suffocating. Rachel continued the chant, her voice unwavering despite the chaos around us. I clutched the pendant, focusing on the intention to release the spirit and restore peace. With a final, powerful word, a blinding light enveloped the room. The Dybbuk let out a bone-chilling scream as the light pierced its form, dissipating the darkness that had taken hold of my home. The whispers ceased, the temperature normalized, and an overwhelming sense of calm settled in. Exhausted but relieved, Rachel and I collapsed onto the floor, the Dybbuk box now silent and inert. In the aftermath, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed within me. The experience left scars, both visible and invisible, a constant reminder of the thin veil between our world and the supernatural. I decided to place the Dybbuk box in a secure, sealed container, hoping to prevent any further disturbances. Yet, sometimes, on particularly cold nights, I wonder if the spirit is still trapped, waiting for another chance to break free. Months have passed since that harrowing winter, but the memories linger like the frost on my windows. Friends and family are cautious around the subject, sensing the lingering tension in my home. Rachel visits occasionally, ensuring that the box remains contained and that no residual energies escape. We both know that the Dybbuk is not easily subdued, and vigilance is necessary to prevent another confrontation. The Dybbuk box serves as a dark reminder of the unknown forces that exist beyond our understanding. It's a testament to the power of unresolved spirits and the lengths they will go to find peace or revenge. Living with the box has changed me, instilling a respect for the unseen and a wariness of tampering with forces beyond our control. If you ever come across an antique like the Dybbuk box, heed the warnings and tread carefully. Some objects carry the weight of countless souls, their stories etched into every crevice and corner. The allure of the unknown can be tempting, but the price of curiosity can be steep. The winter nights in Missouri are long and unforgiving, but they also hold secrets that are best left undisturbed. As I sit by the fireplace, the snow piling high outside, I reflect on the events that unfolded and the lessons learned. The Dybbuk box is more than just a relic. It's a bridge to the past, a conduit for spirits seeking closure. While I strive to live a normal life, the shadow of that winter lingers, a constant reminder of the thin line between the living and the dead. In the end, the Dybbuk box taught me about the fragility of peace and the enduring presence of those who cannot move on. It's a piece of history laden with sorrow and torment, a silent witness to the tragedies that unfold in the dead of winter. And as the winds howl outside, I remain ever vigilant, guarding against the darkness that once threatened to consume my home and my sanity. Story number 6. The Ghost of Lake Superior. Winter on Lake Superior is a relentless force. The vast expanse of ice and snow stretches as far as the eye can see, a frozen mirror reflecting the bleak gray skies. For years, the locals have spoken in hushed tones about the SS Bannockburn, a ship that vanished without a trace in 1902, taking with it an entire crew. Now, decades later, the legend persists, whispered among fishermen and echoed by the howling winds that sweep across the frozen lake. I've always been a skeptic. Growing up in Michigan, I heard the stories but dismissed them as mere folklore, the kind that thrives in the silence of long winters. That is, until the night I decided to confront the legend myself. It was December, the cold biting sharper than usual, and a thick fog rolled in from the lake, blanketing everything in an oppressive silence. My friends had all bailed, citing the unnerving tales, but I was determined to uncover the truth. Equipped with nothing but a sturdy pair of ice cleats, a flashlight, and a camera, I ventured out onto the ice. The lake was eerily still, the only sound the crunch of my footsteps breaking the frozen hush. The sun had set hours ago, leaving the world in perpetual twilight, the sky a tapestry of dark blues and purples. As I walked, memories of the Bannockburn surfaced, stories of a ship caught in a vicious storm, battling waves that seemed to claw at the heavens themselves, only to disappear beneath the ice, leaving no survivors. Hours passed, and the cold began to seep into my bones, each breath a visible testament to the frigid air. Just as doubt started to gnaw at my resolve, the unmistakable sound of a ship's horn pierced the silence. My heart pounded in my chest as I followed the sound, the beam of my flashlight wavering with each step. The fog thickened, making it difficult to see, but the horn continued to call out, a mournful echo that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. Then, through the mist, I saw it, a hulking silhouette emerging from the white veil. The SS Bannockburn, or what remained of it, glided effortlessly across the ice, its ghostly form shimmering in the dim light. The ship was both beautiful and terrifying, the structure intact yet decayed, as if time itself had abandoned it. Windows stared blankly like empty eyes, and the sails were tattered remnants fluttering in the unseen wind. I stood frozen, unable to tear my gaze away as the ship approached. The horn blared again, louder this time, sending chills down my spine. It was then that I noticed the figures, shadowy outlines of sailors moving about the deck, their movements slow and mechanical, as if trapped in an endless loop of their final moments. They didn't see me, didn't acknowledge my presence, but the weight of their silent despair was palpable, summoning every ounce of courage. I raised my camera, desperate to capture proof of this apparition. As the flash illuminated the scene, the ship seemed to flicker, the shadows recoiling as if in pain. I took a step back, heart racing, when suddenly the ship began to dissolve, the fog swallowing it whole. The horn's wail turned into a piercing scream, a sound that resonated deep within me, shaking me to my core. Panic surged through my veins as I turned to flee, but the ice beneath my feet felt like quicksand, resisting my every move. The temperature seemed to drop further, the cold now a living entity pressing in on me from all sides. I stumbled, slipping on the slick surface, and for a terrifying moment, I thought I would fall into the abyss below. But then, as quickly as it had appeared, the ship was gone. The fog lifted, revealing the stark beauty of Lake Superior under a blanket of snow. I was alone, the silence returning with an almost mocking calm. Gasping for breath, I made my way back, each step a struggle against the biting cold and the lingering fear that clung to me like a second skin. When I finally reached the shore, my friends were waiting, their faces etched with worry. They listened in disbelief as I recounted what I had seen, the vivid details still fresh in my mind. The camera was the only tangible proof. But when I reviewed the footage, all I saw was a blur of white and shadows, the ship's image lost in the overwhelming whiteness. Months have passed since that night, but the memory of the SS Bannockburn remains vivid, haunting me in quiet moments and restless nights. I often wonder about the souls lost on that tragic voyage, forever trapped in a spectral limbo on Lake Superior. The lake's beauty is undeniable, but beneath its serene surface lies a darkness that defies explanation, a reminder of the fragile line between reality and the unknown. Sometimes, when the fog rolls in thick and the wind carries the distant sound of a horn, I catch myself staring out across the lake, half expecting to see the ghostly silhouette of the Bannockburn reappear. Whether it was a trick of the light, a figment of my imagination fueled by fear, or something truly supernatural, I may never know. But one thing is certain, the legend of the SS Bannockburn is more than just a story. It's a haunting truth that lingers in the frozen nights of Lake Superior, a testament to the mysteries that lie beneath the ice. If you ever find yourself on the shores of Lake Superior during the dead of winter, listen carefully to the whispers of the wind and the mournful cry of the horn. Respect the lake's silent depths, for you never know when the past might reach out to remind you that some stories never truly end. Story number 7. The Snow Beast of the Rockies. Winter in Colorado is unforgiving. The Rockies, majestic and serene by day, transform into a realm of shadows and whispers when night falls. It was during one such winter that I found myself part of an expedition that would forever alter my perception of these towering mountains. What began as a quest for adventure turned into a harrowing encounter with something beyond our understanding, a creature locals ominously referred to as the Snow Beast. I had always been skeptical of local legends. As an avid hiker and a lover of the outdoors, I thrived on pushing my limits, exploring trails less traveled, and immersing myself in the raw beauty of nature. When my friends proposed a winter trek deep into the heart of the Rocky Mountains, I jumped at the chance. Little did I know, we were venturing into territory where nature's mysteries remained fiercely guarded. Our group consisted of 5, each of us seasoned in our own right, yet united by a shared enthusiasm for the wild. We set up camp near a frozen lake, the ice glistening under the pale moonlight. The first few days were idyllic, filled with breathtaking vistas and the quiet camaraderie that comes from shared hardship. But as the nights grew longer and the temperatures plummeted, an uneasy tension began to settle over us. Started with the sounds, low, guttural growls echoing through the dense forest surrounding our campsite. First, we dismissed them as the calls of distant wildlife or the wind playing tricks on our ears. But as the nights progressed, the growls grew louder, more distinct, and undeniably unnatural. My friend Jake, a seasoned hunter, insisted that the noises were too deliberate to be anything we typically encountered. "It's something else out there," he said, his voice tinged with unease. Then came the footprints, large, unnaturally shaped impressions pressed deeply into the compacted snow. They were unlike any animal tracks we had ever seen, massive, with elongated toes and a pattern that suggested immense weight. We debated whether to follow them, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity. Finally, against my better judgment, we decided to track them, hoping to uncover the source of these unsettling signs. Each step deeper into the forest felt like a descent into another world. The trees loomed overhead, their branches heavy with snow, creating an almost impenetrable canopy. Our flashlights pierced the darkness, casting long, wavering shadows that seemed to dance just beyond our sight. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the crispness of untouched snow. but there was an underlying tension, a feeling of being watched. One particularly frigid night, as we trudged through knee-deep snow, the growls intensified, reverberating through the silent woods. Suddenly, Jake froze, pointing toward a cluster of trees illuminated by the eerie glow of our flashlights. There, barely visible through the thick snow, were eyes glowing, piercing eyes that seemed to see right through us. We stood in stunned silence, every fiber of our being screaming to turn back. But something held us in place. The creature emerged from the shadows, a towering figure cloaked in thick, matted fur that blended seamlessly with the snowy landscape. Its eyes burned with an otherworldly light, and as it moved, the snow seemed to part before it, as if the very ground feared its presence. We were paralyzed, unable to move or even breathe, as the snow beast regarded us with an intelligence that sent shivers down our spines. In a blink, it vanished, leaving us in the oppressive silence of the night. The encounter left us shaken, our initial bravado stripped away by the undeniable reality of what we had witnessed. We returned to camp in a daze, the image of those eyes etched into our minds. The following day, determination replaced fear as we decided to press on, driven by a need to understand, to document, to survive. As we delved deeper into the Rockies, the signs of the snow beast became more frequent and unsettling. We found remnants of its presence everywhere, gnawed branches, shredded gear, and an overwhelming sense of being hunted. The forest seemed to close in around us, each night bringing new horrors. Sleep was a distant memory, replaced by restless nights filled with nightmares of the creature stalking us through the snow. One evening, as dusk settled over the mountains, we reached a clearing encircled by towering pines. In the center stood a frozen pond, its surface smooth and unbroken, reflecting the pale light of the moon. It was here that we decided to set up a more permanent camp, hoping that the open space would offer some respite from the constant fear. That night, the air was unnaturally still. We huddled around a makeshift fire, its flames casting long, flickering shadows. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional crackle of burning wood. It was then that we heard it, a distant, mournful howl that seemed to emanate from the very soul of the mountain. Our hearts pounded in unison, a collective fear binding us together. As the hours dragged on, the howling grew louder, more anguished, until it felt as if the mountain itself was crying out in despair. Suddenly, the ground beneath us began to tremble, the snow shifting and cracking as if alive. Panic surged through the group as we realized the snow beast was drawing closer, his presence undeniable. Without warning, the creature appeared at the edge of the clearing, its silhouette stark against the moonlit snow. This time, there was no mystery in its eyes, only an overwhelming sense of sorrow and rage. It let out a deafening roar, a sound that reverberated through our very bones. Before charging toward us with terrifying speed, we scattered in every direction, the chaos of our flight blending with the relentless assault of the snow beast. The cold was a numbing force, each breath a struggle against the biting wind. I found myself alone, my legs burning with exhaustion, as I stumbled through the snowdrifts, trying to put as much distance between myself and the creature as possible. Hours passed in a haze of fear and desperation. The forest, once a place of beauty, had become a labyrinth of terror. My mind raced, memories of my family and the life I'd built flashing before my eyes. I thought of the legends, the warnings, and the thin line between belief and skepticism that I had once dismissed so easily. Just as hope began to wane, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. The snow beast, sensing the change, retreated back into the depths of the forest, its silhouette fading with the rising sun. Exhausted and frostbitten, I stumbled upon a narrow trail that led to higher ground. Summoning the last of my strength, I followed it, praying it would lead me to safety. By midday, I emerged from the forest, the vast expanse of the Rockies stretching out before me. Relief washed over me. tempered by the lingering fear and the haunting memories of the night. I made my way back to the nearest town, every step a testament to survival against the unknown. In the weeks that followed, I struggled to come to terms with what I had experienced. Friends and family listened with a mix of skepticism and concern. But the evidence was undeniable. The footprints we left behind, the photos we managed to capture before the creature vanished, all pointed to the existence of something beyond our understanding. The snow beast of Colorado's Rockies remains a topic of debate and fear. Some dismiss it as a myth, a product of our imagination fueled by the isolation and harsh conditions. Others believe it to be a guardian of the mountains, a spectral presence ensuring that the wilderness remains untouched by human intrusion. Personally, I carry the memory of those nights with me, a constant reminder of nature's enigmatic power. The Rockies are beautiful, yes, but they are also wild and untamed, harboring secrets that may never be fully revealed. The snow beast is a symbol of that mystery, a force that commands respect and instills a deep, primal fear. If you ever find yourself trekking through the Rockies in the dead of winter, heed the warnings of the locals and tread carefully. The mountains are alive, and not all who wander through their snowy expanses return unscathed. The snow beast watches, a silent sentinel in the snow, ensuring that the wild remains wild, its presence a testament to the enduring power and mystery of nature. As for me, I return to those mountains every winter, driven by a mix of fascination and fear. Each visit is a journey into the unknown, a test of courage against the shadows that lurk beneath the snow. I've learned to respect the legends, to acknowledge that some mysteries are best left undisturbed. The snow beast of the Rockies is more than a creature. It's a reminder of the thin veil between the known and the unknown, a guardian of secrets that humanity may never fully comprehend. In the end, the Rockies taught me that fear and awe are two sides of the same coin, each driving us to explore and yet respect the boundaries that nature sets. The snow beast remains a haunting presence in my mind, a symbol of the untamed wilderness that both beckons and warns us. And as I sit by the warmth of my fireplace, listening to the wind howl outside, I can't help but wonder if the snow beast is still out there, watching, waiting, and guarding its eternal winter kingdom.